So I've been looking through Leonard Peikoff's grammar course again a little bit, and I came across this sentence. Where is it? The idea that wealth is important is true, which Peikoff gives as an example of an appositive. I came across an old FI thread where A and B gave a bunch of alternative clause breakdowns of the sentence. The idea that wealth is important is true. And so I went and I made trees of a bunch of them. And doing so really helped me clarify how I was thinking about the sentence. And in particular, it was interesting because the sentence that I most objected to was the one that Eliot wound up saying was the most similar to how he was looking at it. And just to set the scene a little bit, and the brackets indicates that the stuff within is being treated as a clause. And if it's nested, we have this clause inside this clause. That means it's a nested clause. So there's a lot of background knowledge here. This isn't really like an introductory video, but Eliot's grammar article covers lots of stuff, including the markings that we're using. So this first version I read as we've got this nested clause inside the main clause. So this is how I did the tree. And this I read as basically that is kind of like a conjunction, and so it's sort of floating over because it's not within either one of the clauses, so it's sort of floating over and between them. And then this one I had a complaint about, but now that I look at it again, I guess part of the issue was I wasn't really thinking about it. And a positive is a noun or a substantive noun equivalent, whatever you want to call it. So I don't want to just do that, right? But then I'm like, where do I put it? So that was my complaint. But I mean, I want to. So what's the issue there? I want to give it the dignity of nounness. Talking about dignity, like Peikoff might say in his grammar course. So I don't want to demote it, but I still want this sort of like symmetrical tree structure where everything, like, well, symmetrical is maybe not the right word, but like a regular tree structure where the stuff under the verb is like subjects or objects or maybe modifiers. But I guess, I've already started ebbing away at that a little bit because I've been breaking up verbs more into like the finite verb and the infinitive. So I guess one way to do it, like I said, I mean, I could do it like that, but I don't really want to. I could just say, well, that's an appositive. And that's out. More room there. Let's do manual layout. There we go. And that's how we do appositives. Okay. I feel better about that. Very strong preferences about my grammar trees, apparently. Okay. Oh yeah, and then the thing about for is that in terms of the tree, conceptually, it can matter whether you say that is within or outside of the clause. This is right. So B was trying to figure out, is the nested clause that wealth is important or wealth is important? And I think, because I take this, so this is saying that this thing, the nested clause includes that. And this is saying that it isn't, but is still not part of that isn't part of the main clause either. So it's in sort of some, limbo between them. And I think as far as the trees, it doesn't make a difference. It makes a difference conceptually. but and then Elia's version, which he said was similar to 3, actually, but like reworded for clarity, it actually comes out the same as 3, tree-wise. There we go. And then I thought Elia's explanation was really good, so I want to read through some of that. So there's another option. The idea that is true, wealth is important. This is like 3, but some words moved for clarity and to avoid nesting. Oh, so there is a difference there. So reading on. Here, that is a pronoun or reference word which functions as a noun, a positive, and refers to the text wealth is important. So that needs to be in the main clause. So we put it there. Oh, and well, how do we want to do this? Right. Okay, so I think that's clear. A lot of stuff going on here. So that is in a positive vis-a-vis idea, but is at the same time referring to wealth is important. So wealth is important. Wealth is important is the thing being referred to by the pronoun that. And we're learning as we go in this video. The post was so deep I didn't contemplate all its mysteries on the first read through, no joke. Like I had to make all these trees to even get like 10% of it, because I wrote it before, like when it, was first posted a year ago, but I didn't get a lot out of it. But now I have this new tool, and I happened across this sentence in the Peikoff stuff. I was like, hey, haven't we talked about that one before at length? So, okay. So here, that is a pronoun or reference word which functions as a noun, a positive, and refers to the text wealth is important. It's, I've noticed a theme, by the way, is that it's when one word is wearing 2 hats that it's just confusing as hell for me and a lot of other people as well. It quickly becomes chaos in terms of the analysis. That needs to be in the main clause where it serves as a positive role. So that, I think, is a good argument for why it needs to be in the main clause, because a positive is a noun. Where's my stuff? There we go. A substantive, noun or noun, meaning a noun or noun equivalent, directly following a substantive and used to elaborate or explain it. So that's God's own word from Peikoff. And so it doesn't work if it's nested somewhere else. It doesn't work as in a positive. Yeah, so it's gotta be in the main clause, even if it ruins my tree aesthetic. But so then Elia continues. But the wealth is important idea does not need to be nested in the main clause, because it's being referred to just in like wealth is important, the idea that is true. That particular version doesn't actually work grammatically because it's unclear what that refers to. But if you knew that equals wealth is important, that it stands for or refers to that other clause, then it would work. This is basically what the noun clause version of that does. It stands for some other clause, and where do we put that clause? We often put it prior with a semicolon or as the prior sentence, or sometimes prior in other ways. Or more commonly, what we do is just put the clause that immediately refers to after the that. That allows some other clause to exist right after it to give it something to refer to. I think this is basically the origin of how and why that can make a noun clause. It's an extension of its role as a pronoun or proclause or whatever, some sort of reference, right? Okay, that makes sense. I think it's useful to view that as the word that goes in the first clause and plays a noun role there to refer to and stand for the second clause, just as it does in rewrites with semicolons, right, like that. And the ability to rewrite this kind of stuff with semicolons shows it's not really a nested clause. Referencing isn't nesting, it's a different concept. Even when we write the second clause in what appears to be a nested fashion, I don't think that's fundamental. And actually, we commonly don't. For example, I think that Joe is cool. here the Joe is cool clause is not inside the I think that clause. It's adjacent. That's pretty common. Yeah, that's fair. Saying like the x that y is z, for example, the reason that I love pizza is that it has cheese, which is a bit confusing of an example, which is a bit of a confusing example with two that's, or the example about wealth being important is kind of awkward. I got confused reading that sentence. It's so confusing. We don't actually like to have that y in the middle. It creates complex, tricky sentences. I'm fine with calling that wealth is important a clause that functions as an adjective. But I don't know what grammar label to put on the word that. It's not a relative pronoun because it doesn't have a grammatical role in wealth is important. It's not a conjunction because it's inside the subordinate nested clause, right? Maybe I should just change my requirement that conjunction not be part of either clause adjoins. So it says pronoun reference, but it's a special one with a second extra job, which is letting the thing it refers to come after it, so we have somewhere convenient to put it. Or for view 1, that is a relator, subordinator, governor Nestor. Yeah, right. It's sort of transforming this whole thing into like an adjective on idea, so you sort of reject the appositive view. It's unclear to me that it's actually a subordinate clause though, so maybe not subordinator, but I think that's a standard view on it, so I mentioned it. Nestor is my non-standard alternative to mean a thing that nests something, which is kind of a separate issue in my opinion than whether it's subordinate, right? Yeah, I've seen him use that terminology before. So anyway, trees are useful. They scale up in utility the more confused you are because they give you ways to categorize things and see the differences in how they look, or sometimes that they appear the same. And sometimes you'll notice that something strikes you as unaesthetic and you'll have to change your opinion about it. So use trees. And I use MindNode, but there's like a million tree software utilities that you can use. So that is all.